Welcome to Revelation Unraveled. I'm your host, William Tapley, also known as the third eagle of the apocalypse and the co-prophet of these end times. I suppose before we get started, I should mention this bandage on the tip of my nose. I had a little cancer removed a week ago at the VA hospital in Syracuse, and I don't think it's serious. At least I hope it is not serious. In any event, on this program, I do have a very serious message, and that has to do with the end times prophecy in Isaiah chapter number 4. And it has now suddenly become very relevant, as I will explain in a minute, because Pope Francis is changing the church in quite a few drastic ways. And this is the headline. This was a little over a week ago. Pope Francis asks Brazilian bishops to discuss overturning priestly celibacy. And a lot of people will say, well, that's because we need more priests in the Catholic Church, and this will be an advantage for priests who want to get married. That's not why he is doing it, as I will explain in a few minutes as far as Isaiah chapter number 4 goes. He is doing it so that the Catholic Church will accept ministers in other denominations who do not practice celibacy. There are no Protestant ministers anywhere who give up all for the sake of the gospel. Only Catholic priests are willing to do that. But if Pope Francis makes it so that Catholic priests can become married, then there's no reason why Catholics can't attend Protestant services. And that is the ultimate goal of Pope Francis, because he wants a one-world religion. And here's another headline. Pope Francis gives local bishops more responsibility for mass translations. In other words, he is going to allow local bishops to determine their liturgy. This is another side of the same coin. In other words, if local bishops can determine the liturgy, then why not allow Protestant liturgy? And the end times game is that you go into a town and you will be looking for a church to attend, and you will see a Roman Catholic church, and you will see a Baptist Catholic church, and you will see a Methodist Catholic church, an Episcopalian Catholic church, maybe even a Jehovah's Witness Catholic church. They will all take the name Catholic under this new plan. And in fact, the Catholic would be able to attend a Protestant service in order to fulfill his Sunday obligation. And by the same token, Protestants could attend Catholic Mass and receive Holy Communion, which they can't at the present time. That is the false prophet's goal, a one-world religion. And we find this prophesied in Isaiah chapter number 4. Let's go through this verse by verse. And in that day, right off the bat, this is an end times prophecy. And that means that there are rules to be followed. 7 women shall take hold of one man, saying, we will eat our own bread and wear our own apparel. Only let us be called by your name. Take away our reproach. So who are the 7 women and who is the one man? Isaiah gives us a clue as to who this one man is. He's not Jesus, by the way. By numerology. In other words, there are 6 verses in this chapter. 3 verses plus 3 verses. I'll explain in a minute why I have separated them. Another very interesting way that he verifies that this man is the Antichrist is by that fraction 2/3. In other words, the first 2 verses, verse 1 and 2 in this chapter, have the phrase in that day. And those are the only 2 verses in this chapter that has that phrase. That ties those 2 verses together. The next 3 verses have the word Zion, and only those 3 verses. And of course, that gives the fraction 2 before 3, or 2/3, and the decimal point 666. That is how Isaiah is telling us that this man in the first verse is the Antichrist. So now how about the 7 women who do they represent? Well, now there are false prophets on YouTube who say that the 7 women represent the 7 churches in the book of Revelation. That is false. The 7 women are the same as the 7 heads on the Antichrist. Remember, they have names of blasphemy. In other words, these 7 women are 7 apostate denominations of the end times. And since 7 is a number of completion in the Bible, this simply means that all of the Protestant denominations, all 40,000 of them, are apostate. They have names of blasphemy, and they will all support the Antichrist. But what do they want as far as their deal goes? They say, we will eat our own bread. That means they want their own Eucharist. And that's exactly what Pope Francis is going to let them have. And wear our own apparel. And what does that mean? That means that they want to keep their own doctrines, their own dogmas. And that's exactly what Pope Francis is doing. He's going to let them have their own liturgies. Only let us be called by your name. As I say, we are going to have Episcopalian Catholic churches in our communities, or Presbyterian Catholic churches. They will all be part of this one world religion. And why will they do this? Because they want to take away our reproach. And what is that reproach? The reproach for all Protestant denominations is a lack of unity. They have disunity. They all say that they have the truth, and that's impossible. There cannot be 40,000 versions of the truth. There's only one truth, and only one denomination can have it. But if Pope Francis says you're all part of this new Catholic Church, which will be located in the Vatican, it will be the one world religion. Now, what is the answer to the one world religion? The one world religion answer is that there will be a remnant Catholic Church, and we find that in verse number 2 of Isaiah chapter 4. In that day, another reference to the end times prophecy, the bud of the Lord shall be in magnificence and glory, and the fruit of the earth shall be high, and a great joy to them that shall have escaped of Israel. Now, what does all of that mean? The bud indicates a new branch. Some Bibles just say branch. Some say sprout. This is the new denomination, the remnant Catholic Church. And this started, by the way, September 23rd, on the date of the great sign, when those 62 Catholic Bible scholars published their filial correction. That is the birth of this bud. Of the Lord shall be in magnificence and glory. Isaiah is approving of this remnant Catholic Church. And the fruit of the earth. Well, what's the fruit of the earth? Well, in the first verse, we saw we shall eat our own bread, and that refers to the Eucharist in all the many different denominations. I believe this also refers to the Eucharist, because the Eucharist consists of both the body and the blood of our Lord. So this fruit would be, in my opinion, grapes, which would signify the consecrated wine of the Eucharist. A great joy to them that shall have escaped of Israel. Now, what is Israel? What does that represent? That's the same as Isaiah uses in chapter 45 and Micah chapter number 5. That is a code word for this remnant Catholic Church. And those who escape from Israel, that would be the remnant Catholics. As Jesus said, those who are in the field must not go back to take their cloaks. And that refers, as I say, to the remnant Catholic Church. And now we don't read the next verse, which is verse number 6. Instead, we go in order, because the next 3 verses do not refer to the remnant Catholic Church. They refer to the remnant Jews. Verse number 3. And it shall come to pass that everyone that shall be left in Zion, this is a different group, and that shall remain in Jerusalem shall be called holy, everyone that is written in life in Jerusalem. So why does Isaiah say Zion instead of Israel? Well, he's already used Israel as a code word for the remnant Catholic Church. A better question is, why doesn't he use the word Jacob? Because elsewhere, in his chapter 45, the remnant of Israel, the remnant Jews, are referred to by the code word Jacob. But here Isaiah is talking about the nation of Israel, the landmass, and that's why he uses the term Zion. This is the code word for end times Israel. And that shall remain in Jerusalem shall be called holy. Everyone that is written in life in Jerusalem. Now this shows that there will be a separation of the faithful Jews from the rest of the nation of Israel. And this is very similar to Daniel chapter 12, verse number 1, where the angel tells Daniel that at that time your people, Daniel's people were the Jews, shall be saved. Everyone written in the book. So there is a separation of the Jews to be sealed from the rest of Israel. And the next verse, if the Lord shall wash away the filth of the daughters of Zion, and shall wash away the blood of Jerusalem out of the midst thereof, by the spirit of judgment and by the spirit of burning. So I'm not sure who the daughters of Zion would be. I suspect they are the Jews who do not live in Israel. Some of them will also be saved. And what does the spirit of judgment and the spirit of burning represent? Well, whenever you have a pair like that in the end times, you look to see if that might not refer to the two witnesses, Enoch and Elijah. And the spirit of burning, that sounds very much like Elijah. Elijah is always associated with fire. He went up to heaven in a fiery chariot. And remember, on the 11th anniversary of 9/11, in that fire tornado in Australia, Isaiah said, I am here. And in fact, I believe both Enoch and Elijah are here right now on this planet. So that would leave the spirit of judgment to be the prophet Enoch. So now let's look at verse number 5. And the Lord will create upon every place of Mount Zion, and where he is called upon a cloud by day and a smoke, and the brightness of a flaming fire in the night, for over all the glory shall be a protection. So this mount in Zion, I am sure this is the mount which Jesus warns the Jews they must flee to in the Olivet Discourse. Let those who are in Judea flee to the mountains. This is where the 144,000 who are sealed must flee to. And according to the Jewish teenager, Natan, this will be the Mount of Olives. And again, we have two more manifestations here. A cloud and smoke by day, and the brightness of a flaming fire by night. Again, I believe these reference to the two prophets. They are the ones who are going to protect and seal and teach this remnant of Israel. Again, we have brightness of a flaming fire, that would be Elijah, and we have cloud and smoke for Enoch. So here, each of the two prophets have two characterizations, and in the previous verse, they each have one characterization. But we're not done. Those three had to do with the remnant Jews. Now let's look at the verse number 6, which completes about the remnant Catholics. Verse number 6, and there shall be a tabernacle for a shade in the daytime from the heat, and for a security and covert from the whirlwind and from rain. Well, the tabernacle, of course, as we Catholics know, houses Jesus in our churches. In this end times, this tabernacle refers to Mary because she also housed Jesus. She is the new Ark of the Covenant. And what would an end times prophecy in the Bible be without some reference to Mary? That's almost always the case. And this is the reference that fulfills that requirement of end times Bible prophecy. For a shade in the daytime from the heat. Well, why would you need shade in the heat? And that's because the woman The remnant Catholic Church flees into the desert, as Jesus says in the Olivet Discourse. Let those who are in the field not go back to take their cloak. And security and covert, those are the two protections. Well, there's another case where you see a pair of protection, like, for example, the two wings of an eagle. They undoubtedly represent Mary's rosary and scapular. The security, that would be your aggressive or your military type weapon against the Antichrist, and covert would be your protection, like the scapular. In other words, the security is the rosary, and the covert protection is the scapular. Protection from the whirlwind and from rain. Now, why would you need protection from rain? Well, remember that in the book of Revelation, the serpent chases after the woman and casts after her a flood. And I'm sure that's what the rain results in. And once again, Mary's rosary and scapular will save the remnant church in the desert. So that's what Isaiah is prophesying about here in his chapter number 4. And I want to show you one more interesting, to me interesting, I know a lot of people don't take this seriously, but in Gangnam Style, Psy's music video, he shows a very interesting scene, and I have pointed this out to you before. And this is where Psy prances up and down the center of a bus. And there are 7 women on the bus. And they are all wearing different apparel. I believe Enoch inspired Psy to make this video. Psy is a stand-in for the Antichrist. The 7 women are the 7 women who take hold of the man. And in this scene, if you remember, at first the women are all sitting in their seats. They don't pay much attention to Psy, but he keeps prancing up and down the aisle, and eventually they all join him. And I think that is exactly what is going to happen. Right now, the 40,000 Protestant denominations, very few of them are supporting Pope Francis. But as we go along, I think more and more of them are going to dance in the aisle of the bus. And they will want to take, will take that name. Only give us your name. Let us have our own apparel, our own dogmas and doctrines, and let us eat our own bread. Let us have our own Eucharist, and Pope Francis is going to go right along with that. And now I want to remind you, where else are you going to find this understanding of the end times prophecy? You won't find an understanding of Isaiah chapter 4 anywhere on the internet or anywhere else. No Catholic, Protestant, or Jewish Bible scholar has ever understood Isaiah chapter number 4. And the reason I mention that is because I am asking for donations at this time to provide seed money for my new book. And since the last program, I want to thank Jorge and Adrienne. Thank you very much for your donations. And if any of you would like to help, just go to either my YouTube channel, click on the PayPal button, or go to my thirdeaglemedia.com website.